Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton's Communications and Marketing Department. And today we're going to talk to one of our council members. Donnie Tuck is with us and you're going to learn a little more about him, and he's going to talk about his goals for the city over the next year or two. Welcome, it's good to have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. And Councilman Tuck, you don't mind if I call you Donnie?
That's fine.
Okay. You have a wonderful smile, by the way. That's one of the things I noticed about you first, is you just have this amazingly warm smile. Is that natural?
I think so, but I'm not sure.
It looks natural.
Thank you.
So tell me a little bit about your background. I mean, I know a little bit from going to the website, but I think the people out there may not know how you came to be where you are now. What background did you bring to it?
It really is a long story. I grew up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Graduated from Duke University and had a brief stint in broadcasting, television broadcasting.
So you're better at this TV thing than I am.
Somewhat rusty, but anyway, you do a great job. Was interested, I think, in public service probably since I was in the first grade. Knew that was something I wanted to do, and just had a circuitous route of getting here. But came to Hampton. My wife and I were married in Sterling, Virginia. She was in the Air Force and was transferred to Langley from the Pentagon in 1990. So that brought us to the area. And just because we thought she had one more transition in the military, I wanted to try and be better prepared. So I entered the master's program at Old Dominion in Public Administration. Graduated from that and worked for the city of Norfolk for a number of years, and we just loved this area and decided to make it home.
So when you worked for Norfolk, were you living in Hampton or did you move here?
I was going back and forth for about 8 years.
Ooh, that's a long time going through that tunnel tube. I did it for about a year and it was hard, very hard.
Well, I think sometimes in the summer really not knowing what time you're going to get home is probably the most challenging aspect of it.
Yeah, but it's a little nice to have that transition. It's not like, you know, it's like I could think about work until I hit the tunnel, and then I thought, okay, now my time is over and it's time to be in my home brain, not my work brain.
Listen to a lot of NPR.
Yeah, anyway. That's right. So what made you decide to run for office? Obviously, you're already interested in public service, but it's a whole different thing being on staff and being the elected board.
Well, I think the difference really is having a seat at the table, as people say, is that as a citizen you can come before council and you can be heard, but you're not really sure if the things that are your concern are being acted upon. And so as I just kind of kept coming before council for all those years, really decided that it was something I wanted to be a part of and try and help, I guess, make life better as I saw it for just the other residents. Okay,
now I want to come back to that for a minute. Well, I'll just jump in. One of the things that I do notice about you when you speak, it is very much, very often, not only, but it is about the individual. Not always policy, but that concern for an individual who has an individual issue.
Well, growing up in Chapel Hill, we were about 3 blocks away from the main part of downtown Chapel Hill, and yet we lived on dirt streets. For about 25 years, I think it took that long for my parents and the neighbors to get the streets paved, and we're only talking about maybe 3 streets in this area. And so just that effort that it took them just made me really passionate about trying to do the best I could for others.
That's inspiring. Thank you. So talk about a couple of issues that, you know, maybe they're not necessarily the biggest issues, or maybe they are, but something you feel passionate about accomplishing in your tenure over the next couple years.
Well, I think there are a number of projects that are already underway with respect to the master plans. But I think just trying to make sure that every neighborhood feels a part of that and is a part of the master planning process. And I know we have about 6 master plans, and they're broad plans to try and enhance, I think, perhaps periphery of neighborhoods and areas. But when you start getting into the meat of some of the areas, some of the older neighborhoods, they're not perhaps getting some of the same treatment. At least that's my perspective. And if you talk to some of the residents, that's partly their perspective. And so the sense really is just to try and make sure that everybody feels that they're vested in what the city's doing.
And how do you go about that? I mean, obviously, since I've been here, one of the things I've been trying to do is really increase the outreach, but it's hard. And you know, I came in during the community plan update, and there were some people who were extremely actively involved in that, but it's hard, and I came from the outside. It's very hard to tell people, okay, you've worked all day, you've gotten dinner on the table, now I want you to come to City Hall or come to a public meeting and help have that input. How do you get more people to become involved?
That's a challenging aspect of it, and you're correct. What I find is that I go to a number of meetings, is that for the most part, a lot of the civic associations consist of older members. And they are just trying their best to try and come up with creative ways of getting younger folks involved. Otherwise, I guess at some point when those members die off, and that's reality, when they die off, that whole movement, that effort dies with them, and that's the unfortunate aspect of it. I'm not a community organizer, so it's not really me, but I think going there and just trying to be a part of what's going on there and just sometimes offering some strategies of what I've seen in other localities and what I read about, but for the most part, it's really going to be up to those communities to try and bring those people in and keep people involved. And some do it better than others.
Right. I remember talking to the With Exchange Club president, and the average age is something like almost 80. I mean, it is definitely an older organization, and they're trying to pull in younger people. And some of the neighborhood associations, are that way too. Now, Aberdeen, I talked to them recently, and they're not that way. For some reason, they have this multi-generational pot, and also they're bigger than the neighborhood.
Right.
They're people who have a connection to the neighborhood. So, But that is such a challenge. We have a lot of older housing stock and a lot of older neighborhoods, and how do we get a little bit revitalized?
Well, that's a challenge, and I think, I have a daughter who's 28 years old, and she lives in Atlanta now, and one of the things I would desire is for her to find something for her here, because again, if the city, it's like anything, if you're not replenishing yourself, you eventually die. I don't think it's going to happen to our city because we still have a number of military who moved to the area. We have a number of young families, and it's just trying to create that outreach. And I think perhaps we're going to have to do some things differently. We don't have, I guess, the large business or corporation that would involve a number of young people. But I also think, though, if we become more entrepreneurial, we can try and say that this is a place where if you're young and you desire to start your own business or something like that, then hey, we're willing to give you a shot. And I think once that reputation gets established, we've got the entertainment venues all around us, we've got a great quality of life, and we've got housing that's not expensive. But I think it's that one other piece that's missing. It's like, really give us a try. That there's an opportunity for you if you desire maybe to venture out on your own.
And I think too, with the housing that's not expensive, it's a great starter place. And then if you have those young couples or young families or even young singles, they can fix it up, and then you don't have, it elevates a little bit each of the neighborhoods. But you need to get people moving in and doing that.
That's
and
correct.
It's hard.
And that is the challenge. But I think we're working very, very hard at it. And we have a number of master plans, and I think all of it is designed to try and make sure that people can find whatever it is they want here at Hampton. We've got great communities, safe communities. It's a very livable city. It's easy to get around our city. There are lots of positives.
Much more compact than some of the others. You have to go around a bridge usually. There's so many creeks, but that's one of our strengths too. I have a kayak in the garage, and I can be in the water, within 10 or 15 minutes of when I get home, or anywhere, driving around the city. It's nice. Okay, so neighborhoods and revitalizing and younger folks. What are some other issues you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think the other part of that really is just trying to, has to do with our business communities. And I spend quite a bit of time, I think, talking to the residents, the merchants over in Phoebus. And right now we're in the process of going through another master plan for Phoebus, particularly because of what's happening at Fort Monroe, the Fort Monroe National Monument.
Right.
And so the idea right now is to make sure that they also feel that they're vested, that the city's concerned about them, and so there's some projects going on there. But again, if we try and make sure that everybody feels like they're vested, that their concerns are percolating to the top, I think we're going to have a wonderful opportunity for everybody. But that's one. So we're talking about neighborhoods, and we're talking about the merchants.
The small business folks.
Small business in particular, yes.
Okay. Anything else you want to highlight?
We talk about 3-leg stools, but I think the 2-leg's going to work for the day.
Okay. Where do you see, what are a challenge for the city? What is, the biggest thing that we have to overcome in order to move forward?
Well, again, I think it's the master plan process, and when I say that, we've got some that we've started and we haven't fully gotten to the end. And I think sometimes when you start and then you stop, people who've invested a lot of time in that planning process wonder if it was for naught. And so I think we've got to try and make sure that when we start one, we continue that momentum, see it all the way through. do a lessons learned, and so when we go into the next master planning process, that we try and make sure that we get it right from the beginning.
Yeah, I see that as a challenge, because when I've gone back and read some of our master plans, they're beautiful, but the recession hit, and really so many things have been put on hold for the past 4 to 5 years, that now what I see is there's all this pent-up demand. And so how do you go about moving forward and deciding what gets funded and what the priorities are? I mean, with Phoebus, at least there's a formal process where we're updating it because factors have changed,
right,
relating to Phoebus. But the other master plans, really not so much has changed, except it's been a struggle to fund them as we initially envisioned.
Right, and again, the I guess recession was a factor in that. And also, again, as someone said, when you have councils that change, you have a change of ideas. And so sometimes you have to put something in place that will actually not so much outlive the council, but that it does move forward regardless of some of the ideologies that come afterwards. And I might be one of those folks with a changing ideology. I'm certain I'm one of the folks with the changing ideology, but just the same, we still need to try and make sure that we put those things in place that will go on and that are positive. And so when we get to the end, we can look back and say, hey, wow, that was great.
So you find those areas of agreement,
yes,
that even if, and almost no council vote is 7-0, there's always going to be different viewpoints. And so if you can build those master plan foundations and 5-year spending plan, I think that's one of the issues too for our capital plan is we've been unable to say, here's what we can spend 2 years from now or 3 years from now, because we're waiting to see, is it going to pick back up?
Right.
So you envision council, and I know we've had 2 strategic retreats and probably one more coming, but doing that big picture thinking and agreeing on priorities. Is that a piece of this moving forward?
I certainly believe so. And I think the other thing too, if we go back to the other stool, is going to be how we provide services to our residents in the future. And I think that we've got to look at being more strategic, looking at building partnerships with some of the other localities. I don't think that Hampton can do it alone, given some of the things that are down the road as far as costs and things like even with some of the environmental protection requirements. It's going to put a challenge, it's going to put a strain on our residents. We are an aging city. We just can't do it alone. So I think it's one of those things strategically looking down the road is to try and look at building partnerships for providing of services.
So are there any things you have in mind along the, I mean, I know there's a Hampton Road Sanitation is looking at potentially, doing a regional, not just the part of the sewer they now do, but the part that's under the streets, the city part too.
Right.
And I know we're doing a regional animal control facility that involves Newport News and I think one or 2 other localities.
Well, let's expand that. Let's look at the cooperation between Newport News Fire and Hampton Fire with respect to certain areas. I think there are even more things that are there, but I think the challenge is really in city government, whether it's at the elected level or it's the managerial or departmental, whatever level, people like to feel like, hey, this is my turf and I want to protect it. And I think we've got to let go. And when you let go and look down the road and say what's in the best interest of our residents long term, then I think it's easy to say, look, let's really sit down and strategically look at the things we do. And there's turnover every year in every department, in every city, every county. So you can do some things without laying off people. That's always the great scare. But you can do some things just through natural attrition and try and bring departments together or operations together.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, personal goals for you over the next couple years. Do you have anything you are looking to accomplish outside of your government role?
Not really giving that a lot of thought. I just want to be the best public servant that I can be in Hampton and perhaps look back like some of the former council members who served their term and look back on the city and just say, hey, I was a part of creating something great that's going to be long lasting. And I think that's probably the long-term goal personally and as an elected official.
Well, I think sometimes you guys don't get a lot of personal time or a lot of personal life. You really are on very, very much of the time, going to meetings, talking to constituents on your email. It is probably the world's biggest part-time job right now.
For sure. It does involve a lot of time. Again, I go to a lot of meetings, but that's reward in itself. I know I have a servant nature, and to me, this is just another level of service.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to add? I know I get to ask all the questions, and sometimes I may not go where you want me to go.
No, this has been great, and I appreciate your having me here.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it too. And thank you for watching this episode of Round Robin. I hope you'll come back.